All right, settle in. This is 2 hours of history for when your brain has too many tabs open and none of them are closing. No tests, no grades, just humanity repeatedly making decisions. Let's begin. Imagine conquering half the known world and still having to attend meetings. That was Rome. Rome didn't just expand, it scaled aggressively, like a startup that accidentally became the world's dominant operating system. At first, it was small, just a city. Then it was a republic. Then it was conquering neighbors. Then neighbors of neighbors. Then entire continents. And every time they conquered something, they had to manage it. Roads, taxes, armies, grain supply, political drama. The Roman Senate was basically a never-ending comment section. Senators arguing, generals getting too popular, emperors trying not to get assassinated, which statistically was difficult. Rome proved something important. Expansion is easy compared to maintenance. They conquered the world, but they could not conquer internal politics. And eventually, the burnout showed. Empires don't fall in a day. They get tired. Now imagine reacting to that chaos by saying, actually, I'm going to live in a stone room and not talk. Enter medieval monks. While Europe was full of plagues, wars, and power struggles, monks quietly invented an early version of airplane mode. They copied manuscripts at candlelight. They grew food. They prayed. They stayed silent. They didn't ignore history. They opted out of its noise. In a way, they preserved civilization by stepping away from it. Sometimes progress doesn't look like conquering something. Sometimes it looks like sitting still long enough to protect it. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Europe, people were doing the opposite. Royal courts were not peaceful. They were expensive group chats with real consequences. Take Versailles. Hundreds of nobles competing for the king's attention. Every gesture mattered. Every outfit mattered. Even watching the king wake up was considered a privilege. Clout existed before the internet. If you stood close enough to the throne, you gained power. If you stood too far away, you faded. The court wasn't about governance, it was about visibility, and visibility was survival. Then there was Diogenes. He saw all of that and decided the solution was a barrel. Diogenes lived in what was basically a large jar. He rejected wealth, status, and expectations. When Alexander the Great offered him anything he wanted, Diogenes reportedly said, "Stand out of my sunlight." That is confidence. He proved something strange but powerful. You can't be stressed by luxury if you refuse to value it. Minimalism was not a trend, it was a rebellion. Not everyone wanted sunlight and barrels. Some wanted everything. Alexander the Great was barely in his 20s when he decided the known world was not enough. He moved quickly. He conquered quickly. He did not slow down. He treated continents like side quests. Within a decade, he built one of the largest empires in history. Then he died. No retirement, no cool-down period, just speed. History has many conquerors. Few had that much urgency. While emperors conquered, farmers repeated. Wake up, plant, harvest, sleep. For thousands of years, agriculture was the main storyline of humanity. No dramatic plot twists, just cycles. The first grind set wasn't about productivity hacks, it was about survival. Every civilization rested on people who did the same thing every day for generations. History isn't only shaped by dramatic events, it's shaped by repetition. Then something shifted. The Renaissance happened. Europe looked at art and science and said, what if we turned the brightness up? Perspective in painting, realistic anatomy, architecture that felt ambitious again. It wasn't random, it was a rediscovery. Ancient knowledge resurfaced, creativity exploded, humanity upgraded its graphic settings. Then came the Enlightenment, which was essentially a 200-year period of overthinking. What is government? What are rights? What is freedom? Why are we doing things this way? Philosophers debated endlessly, wrote endlessly, printed endlessly. They questioned kings, questioned churches, questioned traditions. It was intellectual caffeine, and revolutions followed. The French Revolution started because bread was expensive and escalated fast. When inequality builds long enough, it eventually explodes. The monarchy underestimated frustration. The people underestimated chaos. Revolutions don't come with instruction manuals. They come with momentum. And once momentum begins, it's difficult to steer. Some invasions were defeated not by armies, but by winter. Russia has historically functioned as a seasonal boss fight. Napoleon underestimated it. Hitler underestimated it. Snow does not negotiate. History teaches this repeatedly. And yet, people still underestimate weather. Long before modern shipping, there was the Silk Road, trade routes connecting east and west, spices, silk, ideas, delivery time, several months. Globalization wasn't new, it was just slower. Cultures met not through screens, but through caravans. Exchange shaped civilizations more quietly than conquest. Ancient cities were impressive, also crowded. Without modern plumbing, urban life has always been intense. Markets noisy, streets packed, information traveling by rumor. Civilization has always been slightly chaotic. We just upgraded the infrastructure. Vikings were not just raiders, they were explorers. Yes, they arrived loudly, but they also navigated brilliantly. They reached North America centuries before Columbus. They treated oceans as pathways, not barriers. History often remembers their axes. It should also remember their maps. Then came the age of exploration. European powers looking at oceans and thinking there must be something out there. Sometimes they were right, sometimes they were very wrong. But they kept sailing. Risk was high, maps were incomplete, navigation required courage and guesswork. Curiosity is one of humanity's strongest traits. It's also one of its most dangerous. The gold rush was mass optimism, thousands moving towards rumors of wealth. Most found nothing, but the idea of sudden transformation was enough. History is full of collective hope. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it's just mud. Then machines changed everything. The Industrial Revolution introduced gears, factories, production at scale. Work moved from fields to cities. Noise became normal. Speed increased. Efficiency became a virtue. Humanity entered productivity mode and never fully left. World wars were humanity operating at maximum intensity. Technology accelerated. Alliances complicated everything. Scale became global. The wars reshaped borders, economies, and identities. They also left scars that lasted generations. Progress and destruction moved side by side. Then, the Cold War wasn't loud in the same way. It was tense. Two superpowers watching each other, competing in space, competing in influence, avoiding direct collision. It was a long pause filled with nervous energy. Then, someone decided to go to the moon. The space race proved something simple. Human beings want to go further, even when it's expensive, even when it's risky, even when Earth still has problems. Curiosity again, persistent. Then came the internet. Information everywhere, instant communication, infinite noise. We built a digital empire in decades, faster than Rome, faster than industry, faster than anything before it. And with it came overstimulation. Work culture evolved, from fields to factories to offices to remote screens. Humans have always been tired. Technology changes, fatigue remains familiar. Some societies slowed down intentionally. Japan's Edo period closed its borders. Isolation created internal stability. Sometimes progress comes from reducing input, not increasing it. Stoicism taught something similar. Control what you can, accept what you cannot. Ancient emotional firewall. In chaotic times, philosophy becomes survival. History is not a straight line. It's a loop. Empires rise, they expand, they manage, they strain, they fall. Ideas rise, they spread, they change, they adapt. Every generation believes it is uniquely dramatic. It isn't. It's part of the pattern. And now you've made it through 2 hours of history. Or maybe you drifted in and out. That's fine. History doesn't demand constant attention. It just continues. Quietly, relentlessly, predictably unpredictable. Empires will rise again. Ideas will spread again. People will overthink again.
Someone will try to conquer something again, and someone else will move into a barrel and say, "No thanks." Humanity keeps trying. That's the pattern. And now your brain has slightly fewer tabs open, or slightly more. Either way, you survived history. For today.
We left the moon. But we didn't leave ambition. Back on Earth, the machines kept running. Factories multiplied, cities expanded, timetables tightened. The Industrial Revolution didn't just build engines, it rebuilt time itself. Before industry, life followed seasons. After industry, life followed clocks, shifts, schedules, whistles, deadlines. Humanity synchronized with machinery. Efficiency became morality. If you weren't productive, you were behind. And once productivity became normal, it never really slowed down. Then the 20th century accelerated everything. 2 world wars, not regional, global. Technology evolved faster in conflict than in peace. Planes, tanks, radio, radar. The scale of destruction increased, but so did coordination. Entire nations mobilized. Factories became war machines. Scientists became strategists. Civilians became targets. History moved faster than people could emotionally process. The wars ended, but their shadows lingered. And then came the Cold War. Not loud, not constant gunfire, just tension. 2 superpowers standing across the world like rivals in a silent duel. Arms races, space races, spy games, proxy conflicts. It was a psychological era. Fear became infrastructure. Missiles were built, but not launched. The entire planet held its breath for decades, and somehow that's what was called peace. Then someone looked at the sky and said, "What if we just leave?" The space race wasn't only about rockets. It was about pride, curiosity, dominance. The moon became a symbol, not of territory, but of possibility. Human beings walked on a surface no one had ever touched before, and for a moment the world felt unified. Then everyone went back to work. And then came the internet. Information detached from geography, communication detached from distance, knowledge detached from scarcity. Suddenly, libraries were portable, conversations were instant, opinions were global. The digital empire rose faster than Rome ever did. There was no slow expansion, just exponential growth. Every device became a gateway. Every person became a broadcaster. Humanity gained infinite tabs and forgot how to close them. Work evolved again, from farms to factories to offices to screens. Now the office lives in your pocket. Work hours blur. Notifications replace whistles. Emails replace scrolls. The tools changed. The tiredness didn't. Fatigue has always been part of civilization. It just wears different clothes now. Some societies, at times, chose something different. Japan's Edo period closed its borders, limited outside influence, focused inward, stability over expansion. Isolation can be strategic. Not every era needs conquest. Sometimes it needs containment, a nation in do not disturb mode. Philosophers saw this pattern too. Stoicism wasn't flashy. It didn't promise power. It promised control. Not over empires, over reaction. Control your thoughts. Accept external chaos. Maintain internal order. In a world of constant change, emotional discipline becomes armor. Not every battle is external. Some are entirely within. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize,
they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest. Innovation drives growth. Fatigue drives collapse. Recovery drives renewal. Over and over, humanity learns, forgets, learns again. Every generation believes its era is uniquely overwhelming. It isn't. It's uniquely familiar. There were always deadlines, always wars, always revolutions, always new technologies, always someone predicting the end. And yet, here we are, still building, still arguing, still exploring, still overthinking. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize, they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest. Innovation drives growth. Fatigue drives collapse. Recovery drives renewal. Over and over, humanity learns, forgets, learns again. Every generation believes its era is uniquely overwhelming. It isn't. It's uniquely familiar. There were always deadlines, always wars, always revolutions, always new technologies, always someone predicting the end. And yet, here we are, still building, still arguing, still exploring, still overthinking. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize, they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest. Innovation drives growth. Fatigue drives collapse. Recovery drives renewal. Over and over, humanity learns, forgets, learns again. Every generation believes its era is uniquely overwhelming. It isn't. It's uniquely familiar. There were always deadlines, always wars, always revolutions, always new technologies, always someone predicting the end. And yet, here we are, still building, still arguing, still exploring, still overthinking. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize, they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest. Innovation drives growth. Fatigue drives collapse. Recovery drives renewal. Over and over, humanity learns, forgets, learns again. Every generation believes its era is uniquely overwhelming. It isn't. It's uniquely familiar. There were always deadlines, always wars, always revolutions, always new technologies, always someone predicting the end. And yet, here we are, still building, still arguing, still exploring, still overthinking. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize, they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest. Innovation drives growth. Fatigue drives collapse. Recovery drives renewal. Over and over, humanity learns, forgets, learns again. Every generation believes its era is uniquely overwhelming. It isn't. It's uniquely familiar. There were always deadlines, always wars, always revolutions, always new technologies, always someone predicting the end. And yet, here we are, still building, still arguing, still exploring, still overthinking. If you zoom out far enough, history stops looking chaotic. It starts looking cyclical. Empires rise, they expand, they stabilize, they fracture. Ideas rise, they inspire, they spread, they mutate, they fade. Then something new begins. The names change, the pattern doesn't. Curiosity drives exploration. Ambition drives conquest.
Good. We continue. Not with a new empire, not with a new war, but with momentum. Rome built roads that outlived Rome, stone paths stretching beyond the horizon. Legions marched across them, merchants traveled them, ideas flowed across them. Infrastructure is quiet power. You don't notice it until it disappears. Aqueducts carried water across miles, gravity doing the work, engineering doing the thinking. Civilization is often just problem-solving at scale. Solve water, solve food, solve movement, and suddenly a city becomes permanent. Inside the Colosseum, crowds gathered. Entertainment wasn't optional, it was ritual. The spectacle distracted, the spectacle unified, the spectacle controlled. History has always understood attention. Whoever holds it shapes perception. Meanwhile, in colder corridors of monasteries, a single monk walks alone. Footsteps echo. Candlelight flickers. Silence has weight. In times of chaos, silence can feel revolutionary. Libraries grew quietly. Rows of manuscripts, carefully copied, carefully preserved. Knowledge survived not because it was loud, but because someone protected it. Feasts filled royal halls. Long tables, heavy goblets, music and noise. Power likes to display itself. Excess becomes theater. Beyond castles, villages lived simply. Smoke rising from small homes, fields stretching outward, seasons repeating. Most of history happened far from crowns. Then came plague. A figure in a dark cloak walking through empty streets. Disease does not ask permission. It redraws maps quietly. Entire populations shifted. Labor changed. Power changed. Even catastrophe becomes part of the cycle. Blacksmiths hammered steel in glowing workshops. Heat, force, repetition. Tools shape empires as much as armies do. A sword is just metal until someone swings it. Scholars study the sky. Charts, stars, careful observation. Curiosity lifts the human gaze upward, even when the ground is unstable. Ships navigated by constellations, tiny vessels beneath vast skies, trusting patterns above them. Exploration has always required faith, in maps, in math, in possibility. Revolutionaries wrote pamphlets at night, ink spreading ideas faster than swords could. Words travel farther than armies, and sometimes they last longer. Snow fell over battlefields again. Napoleon stared at the horizon. History warns. Ambition ignores. Winter waits. Caravans reached city gates after months of travel. Spices, silk, stories. Exchange connects worlds more permanently than conquest ever did. Cathedrals rose slowly, stone upon stone, generations building something they would never see completed. Patience built the tallest structures. Steam trains cut across countryside. Speed became expectation. Distance shrank. Time compressed. Humanity began outrunning its own reflection. Inside factories, workers moved in rhythm with machines. Hands matched gears, breath matched noise. The line between human and mechanism blurred. Efficiency became identity.
War returned with new scale. Mud-filled trenches, letters sent home, silence between explosions. Technology improved, suffering scaled with it. Missile silos stood quietly underground, weapons built to never be used, peace maintained by threat. The Cold War wasn't quiet, it was restrained tension. Scientists calculated trajectories by hand, chalk on boards, equations layered over hope. Before rockets fly, someone must imagine them. Televisions flickered in living rooms. The world entered homes. Distance no longer protected people from events. Observation became participation. Early computers hummed in quiet rooms. Large, slow, revolutionary. Information began detaching from paper. Data became fluid. Cities stretched upward. Steel replacing stone. Glass reflecting ambition. Vertical growth mirrored internal pressure. Subways carried crowds underground. Anonymous, compressed, efficient. Urban life accelerated pulse rates. Tea ceremonies unfolded in silence. Measured movements, deliberate gestures. Ritual slows time, and slowing time feels radical. A philosopher writes by candlelight, not to change the world, but to understand it. Understanding often outlasts influence. Libraries burned in various eras, flames swallowing pages. Knowledge is fragile. Preservation requires vigilance. Cities rebuilt after destruction. Bricks replaced. Foundations reinforced. Humanity rarely quits. It reconstructs. Night skylines glow with artificial light. Stars fade behind it. Progress illuminates, but it also obscures. A single person stares at a glowing screen. Infinite information. Finite attention. The modern battlefield is cognitive. Dust settles over ancient battlefields. Silence returns. Eventually, every conflict becomes archaeology. Explorers planted flags in foreign soil. Ownership declared. History complicated. Discovery and disruption often arrive together. Mapmakers drew continents imperfectly. Borders guessed. Oceans uncertain. Certainty has always been temporary. Markets argued. Kings signed decrees. Storms swallowed ships. Workers wiped sweat. Soldiers returned home. The details change. The rhythm remains. A crown rests on cold stone. Power is temporary. It always has been. Smoke rises over quiet cities. Sometimes from celebration. Sometimes from loss. Either way, it fades. A philosopher gazes at stars. Same sky. Different centuries. Humanity has always looked up for answers. And finally, Earth itself, suspended in silence. No borders visible. No wars visible. No politics visible. Just one sphere. History feels enormous from the inside. From the outside, it's movement on a small planet. You are part of that movement, not separate from it, not above it, inside it. Breathing in one chapter of a very long book, empires will continue, ideas will evolve, technology will accelerate, people will get tired, people will rebuild, the pattern will persist. And tomorrow, history continues again.
All right, let's continue. We left off with humanity looking smaller from a distance. Now we zoom back in. Because history doesn't happen in space, it happens in streets. Rome didn't just build armies, it built roads, stones stretching across continents, straight lines cutting through wilderness. Infrastructure is quiet power. Legions moved faster because roads existed. Trade moved easier because stone held firm. Sometimes dominance isn't loud, it's engineered. Aqueducts carried water across valleys. Gravity became an ally. Engineering became control. When you can move water, you can move civilization. In the Colosseum, crowds gathered. Gladiators stood beneath open sky. Entertainment and mortality shared the same arena. Power understands spectacle. If you can control attention, you can control narrative. Elsewhere, in a narrow monastery corridor, a single monk walked alone, footsteps echoing softly. Not chasing power, not chasing conquest, just discipline. History has always had two speeds, expansion and withdrawal. In libraries stacked with manuscripts, knowledge waited patiently. pages copied by hand, preserved against fire and invasion. Civilization survives because someone decides it should. Royal feasts glittered with excess, tables heavy with food, music echoing through halls. Abundance can look like stability, but sometimes it hides fragility. In small villages under fading sunlight, peasants returned home from fields. No grand speeches, no monuments, just survival. History is often quieter than textbooks suggest. Then came the plague, a masked doctor walking through silent streets. Doors closed, windows shuttered. Invisible forces have always shaped humanity. Fear spreads faster than explanation. In a blacksmith's workshop, sparks flew, metal bent, tools formed. War and peace both rely on craft. Technology begins in small rooms. Renaissance scholars studied star charts, looking upward, mapping the sky. The moment you chart the heavens, you begin questioning Earth. Sailors navigated by those same stars, ships cutting through darkness, trusting points of light. Exploration is faith with coordinates. Pamphlets were written at night. Ideas spread in whispers. Revolutions often begin in ink before they begin in blood. Napoleon stood overlooking snow-covered fields. Confidence against climate. History repeats its lesson about winter, and leaders repeat their mistake. Caravans arrived at city gates. Trade never fully stops, even during tension. Even during conflict, exchange persists. Cathedrals rose slowly, stone stacked toward sky, faith measured in architecture. Belief becomes physical when it towers. Steam trains crossed landscapes. Speed increased again. Distance shrank. Time compressed. Humanity does not like standing still for long. Inside factories, workers paused only briefly. Sweat, repetition, noise. Industry rewards endurance. In muddy trenches, soldiers waited. War isn't constant action. It's often long stretches of fear. Cold War silos were constructed quietly. Cold War anxiety embedded in concrete. Peace sometimes looks like preparation. Scientists calculated trajectories, numbers guiding rockets, mathematics becoming ambition. When thought becomes fuel, distance becomes temporary. Early televisions flickered in living rooms, information centralized, stories broadcast simultaneously, a shared narrative across cities. Early internet terminals hummed softly, green text on dark screens, connection beginning modestly. No one predicted the scale. City skylines grew taller, steel replacing stone, vertical ambition replacing horizontal conquest. Empires now rise upward. Subways filled with commuters, thousands moving in silence. Urban life compresses humanity into rhythm. Tea ceremonies unfolded slowly in Edo, Japan. Measured movements, intentional silence. Sometimes refinement replaces expansion. A Stoic philosopher wrote by candlelight, "Control the internal, release the external." Wisdom often arrives quietly. Libraries burned in history, knowledge lost in smoke.
Progress is fragile. Preservation is constant work. Cities rebuilt after destruction, brick by brick. Humanity rarely quits. It reconstructs. Modern cities glowed at night. Electric constellations on Earth. Artificial stars. We built our own sky. A lone figure scrolled through a glowing device. Infinite information. Infinite noise. The newest empire lives in your pocket. Ancient battlefields fell silent. Dust settled. Conflict fades. Land remains. Explorers planted flags in distant soil, claiming what was never empty. Ambition rarely questions itself in the moment. Mapmakers redrew borders repeatedly. Line shifting. Power shifting. Nothing permanent except change. Roman roads stretched toward horizon again. Reminders that infrastructure outlasts rulers. Stone remembers. Markets argued loudly. Merchants negotiating fiercely. Commerce is organized disagreement. Village festivals erupted in color. Celebration between hardships. Joy survives even in unstable eras. Kings sign decrees with steady hands. Authority looks calm on paper. Reality is more complicated. Ships battled violent storms. Nature remains undefeated. Technology adapts, but never fully conquers. Soldiers returned home from war. Older, quieter. History writes glory. People carry memory. Philosophers spoke to small gatherings. Ideas don't need crowds to begin. They need persistence. Sun rose over ancient cities. Empires begin like mornings. Slow, bright, hopeful. Statues eventually cracked. Symbols erode. Power ages. Caravans cross desert at sunrise again. Trade continues, even when politics fail. Snow covered abandoned battlefields. Silence after chaos. Time heals land faster than people. Rockets launch skyward once more. Ambition remains consistent. Only tools evolve. Libraries filled again. Digital shelves replacing wooden ones. Storage expands. Attention shrinks. Crowds stared at glowing screens. Shared silence. Connected isolation. A single candle burned in darkness. Small light, large shadow. Perspective matters. An open ocean horizon remained calm. Exploration never truly ends. There is always another edge. Ancient scrolls unrolled across wooden tables. Stories preserved. Patterns repeated. A tree grew through ruined stone. Nature reclaiming architecture. Time reclaiming